Hello everybody, my name is Tactical Legos, and today we're going to be starting a build on the Estes Orange Bullet model rocket kit. If you're not aware, this is, at least to my knowledge, a prototype. Pretty sure that's what it says on here. I'll just hold that up if anybody wants to read it. But that is it's a prototype of the Astron Scout, which was the first Estes kit. It was, or Estes rocket that was sold as like a full kit. So this was like one of the prototypes or whatever. I believe this might have been the first in the designer series, but I paid $16.99 for this at my local Hobby Town. One thing that immediately caught my eye was it's got a balsa nose cone. Usually they're usually plastic nowadays. Let's go ahead and open this up and see what we got. Of course, we got the, sorry about that. Had to cough, got some pretty bad allergies going on right now. This thing will go up to 500 feet on an A83 engine, which is the biggest engine they recommend. They don't tell you, but you can also fit all the other 18mm motors in there, so you could really even put a C67 in this thing if you wanted and make it disappear. I'm probably not going to go above an A83. I might try out the half A's at one point. I almost got a pack, but I did not have enough funds at the time of the hobby trip. I could have had funds, but I also splurged on a new crawler, which you might have seen in the video of. But this is a intermediate kit, so it's not too challenging. It's a featherweight recovery, as you can see, which in this case basically means rocket goes up, it's normal, and then the delay charge in the engine, once it fires, instead of ejecting a parachute, it shoots the motor out the back. So again, instead of the nose cone and a parachute coming out the front, the motor instead just shoots out the back, which makes this a lot lighter and changes the center of gravity, so it kind of just tumbles back down. But that's enough of that. Let's go ahead and see what we got. Looks like we got some balsa fin stock there. Another little separate thing. There's our nose cone there. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Got our instructions. Let's go ahead and open this up, just for the sake of simplicity. Take a look at this. Might have to cough again. Alright. Alright. Yeah, that was everything in that bag. Looks like we got our pretty standard full-year warranty card. Got about 1 billion of these. Let's toss that to the side. This is important. Actually, I guess if you're a beginner, you might want to keep one of these around as reference, so that you know, or well, I guess that's the, maybe the Spanish side. Not really sure if it's Spanish or something else. I think it's Spanish, but here's the English side. That does have meters on it though, so if you're looking for the meter conversions, there's that. But here's for all of the rest of the Americans here. Just gives you a little guide for how big you want your sight to be as a minimum safety standard for the different motors. Got our, I think these are, yeah, these are water slide decals for thing. Looks like a little protective cover popped off. It usually does that. Little fin tabs, little side streak things, launch lug. I always end up losing these, so I'm gonna go ahead and just put that back in there with these decals. Just keep those safe, because I always lose those. Gosh. They're allergies. back out this camera a little bit so y'all see what I'm looking at. I don't like to put it on half zoom all the time because I think it lowers the camera quality a little bit. Makes it look a little strange, but I think it'll help us here. This side looks like just the launch procedures, parts, make sure. Yeah, we've got everything. And it looks like the first thing they've got us doing. Where have they got us doing this? Oh, it's right over here. They actually do have the instructions starting over here. Huh. You usually don't see that. First thing they have us doing here, I'll zoom it back in, is preparing the fins. So they want us to, and also with the, these guys, we're going to take the balsa and the, if yours are already coming apart like that, it's alright. Sometimes they're already coming out, but it's nice if they're together, or if you can keep them together, because then you can, and this is not really required. I don't always do this per se. Let me find a decent piece of sanding paper. Just get this sanding block here. And if you can, with the grain, oh, see, that's what can happen sometimes. It's alright, I'll just have to sand these parts individually. And you just want to, with the grain, give it a light sanding. I think this is 150 grit right now that I'm using. It doesn't need much, and like I said before, you really do not need to do this. It's not a requirement. It helps if you're gonna do later on some finishing on the fins, and it might help to get you a smoother paint coat later. That one's trying to crack out too. If you were gonna do like a full primer coat. Alright, and then we're also gonna wanna, like I said earlier, do the same thing with these guys. And again, we don't have to, but we can. Then after we've got all that done with our 150, I like to come back over with some 220. And again, with the grain, just another light sanding. I don't have a sanding block for 220 right now, but this piece will have to do. And then I'm gonna go ahead and off camera go over it once more, just like I did with the 220 with some 320. Again, optional. I'm just doing this just because it might make the paint look better later. Of course, I'm not going to be using primer most likely, so it's going to be a give and a take. Now, we've got all the sanding done. We're going to take a hobby knife, ideally. Really, you can pop these out with your hands if you're good enough. Back the camera up and zoom it in a little bit so y'all can see what's going on there. What's going on with the tripod here? Oh, it's hitting this chair. Sorry about that, y'all. And I don't know, it's a bit hard to see. Hello, Cleo. It's a bit hard to see, but you can see these little tabs right there, there. And then I'm sure there's probably some on, yeah, right there. Looks like another one right there. We're just gonna go through and we're just gonna cut those. Hello, Cleo. Hello. 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 I'm just gonna go through, cut these tabs, make sure this is all, there's another one right there, cleanly separated, there's another one, and I think there's one more right here. And once you got it, it should just pop out nice and clean like that. And I'm gonna go ahead and do that for, looks like, yeah, we got 2 tabs right there and there, then 2 more there, I think, probably on this end. Feels like it. Yeah, it feels like right there. It's a bit hard to see because I sanded it so fine, but I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera just so y'all don't have to watch me cut. Y'all probably get the idea. We're cutting off these little tabs. So I've got all these popped out, and if you're following along building this with me, you might notice, if the camera will focus on them, these little tabs where we just cut it out, they kind of stick up. So I'm going to take some fine sandpaper, and you can do this with a sanding block if you like. I kind of like to usually just set it down, get it nice and flat, and just run it like that, where the, and we don't really want to be changing the profile very much, especially if you'll notice, in this case, there's not any tabs, except there is actually a little bit of a burr that I'm gonna work off a little bit, just to make that fin edge smooth. But this is gonna be the edge that our fin attaches to the rocket. And if there was a tab there, you'd wanna be extra careful not to malform that surface, because then that can make your fin not set as flush as you would like it. Okay, we got another tab right there. These ones don't seem to have any of those on the fin surface. Okay, we got 2 more there. This is some nice and soft balsa. I always like working with balsa because of that. 1 more there. And then well, this one feels good, but you'd kind of want to feel, the other one had a little bit of a burr on the fin edge, so I just gave it a small little, but then you're of course going to do the same thing with these. This is not really required. It helps. It is kind of required if it's on the fin edge where it attaches, but we're also going to do the same thing on the sides of these. Again, trying not to reprofile them, just knocking off those. And if you wanted, you could go kind of like just specifically on those. I'll demonstrate that on this one. You can just go. But I find it's a little bit easier just to kind of drag it along the sandpaper. And I'm going to do the rest of these off camera, once again, because I'm sure y'all don't want to sit here and watch me sand for 2 hours. Okay, so we've got our fins sanded, and we've cut them out, so we can mark that off. Next step, we've also done that. Okay, so they want us to remove these from the part. I'm actually probably going to wait on that just for a minute. And see what else they've got us doing here in the future. Just so I can get an idea of what we're actually going to be doing here. So it looks like after we assemble these little tabs, which would be these guys onto each side of each fin, then they want us to bevel the edge of these guys to make it more aerodynamic. Cut this out, mark the tube, and then put it on the fins. Okay. And then they've got us putting the nose cone last and the launch lug last. So that means our next step will in fact be putting on these guys. So I guess there's nothing left to do but cut these out very similarly to what we did with the balsa wood. If I can get it focused up nice and close for y'all. Maybe my camera can't do that. There we go. can see it's got 2 tabs for each of, actually no, 3. One there, and one there. We're just gonna go through and cut those tabs and get these little square guys out. And where's my hobby knife? These guys can be a little bit stubborn because this is some pretty thick cardboard, so sometimes I find it helps to kind of do it halfway from both sides, like this, and then after that, it'll just fall out. I think that might have been off frame, so I'm just going to do a second one, I'm not sure. But once again, just kind of cutting halfway through it. It's okay if you go all the way through it, but I just find it's a little bit easier to cut about halfway through it, flip it over, then cut the other half. See, that one popped out too. And I'm gonna pop out the other 4 off camera. Alright, we've got all the little squared guys cut out, and again, we'll notice these little tabs, and this again is not required. But I'm going to just very lightly take some sandpaper, and that's off camera, but maybe I might have better luck dragging it once. Yeah, just dragging it once worked better. Just very lightly knock those little bears off. There's 3 of them per thing. That knocked it off. That knocked it off too, it feels like. A little bit more. That one's a little bit more. There we go. And again, trying not to reprofile these. Just trying to knock off these little burrs. I think I fucked up there. That's okay. And you want to try not to do what I did here. Just kind of mess up the edge a little bit on that one. Which is why, again, this is not required. You might even have better luck sanding them once they're on. Or possibly, maybe I was just pressing too hard. Yeah, I'm gonna do the, alright, we got 2 more. I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera real quick. Alright, so once again, they've got us now putting these on each side and then letting them dry. I'm gonna do it one side at a time just for the ease of being able to let them lay flat. And I'm gonna use some Titebond too. I usually like to take, where's a good piece? This will be a good piece. Just a piece of scrap balsa. Stick it down in, get me some glue. And before we put it on, you'll notice this will focus up and in. There we go. That's not the best example. That one has, that was the one I think I messed up. Okay, you'll notice one has a slight little curve on one side, and that, if it will focus back out again, it's going to, if it will not do that, focus, there we go. That little curve, again, this is where the rocket connects. It's gonna go on the bottom of the fin, like that, to where it matches up with this angle. So, get some glue, put it on this part, not a whole lot. to do is usually stick them together. Put a little bit more glue on the part. And then stick them together again. And now, I'm going to give it about 15 to 60 seconds, depending on how I feel. Probably going to give it a little bit longer. While I do that, I'm going to find something to weigh this down, which will just help this lay flat. Let me find something real quick. What would I use that would be... I guess I could do that. Okay, we'll figure out how it's laying first before I worry about that, because it's been about time. I thought I'd have something sitting nearby closer than that. Alright, press it flat. Try to get it lined up as good as we can. I believe if I do like this, should have knocked that off before I did the proper first alignment. Squish it down again. Make sure it's got nice, good, even glue spread. It's gonna probably want to walk on you a little bit while you squeeze it down. That's okay, because it's gonna get even tackier as we squeeze it out. And we can reposition it. And honestly, I'm not sure I'm gonna need weights on that. That's laying pretty flat already. So, since I'm using wood glue, I'm gonna let each of these dry for 30 minutes. Again, you can see I've got that little focus up closer again. Come on, focus, focus, focus. That little rounded edge facing up in that corner so that it matches with this angle here. Because you see, if I turned it around, had it flush with that other side, we're gonna have this little corner sticking out kind of like that. I've exaggerated it a little bit for show, but this edge has an angle to match that so that you don't end up having that. So anyways, I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera. We'll come back and we'll see how I tackle putting them on the other side. While those dry, I've already gotten all three of them done on one side. We're gonna go ahead and look at our next step, which is going to be to put a little angle on these guys, except you want to make sure not on this little marked side. You want to put it on the unmarked side. See, there's a side with a little line on it. You want to do it on the top of that instead of on the bottom where the line is, just like that. And how I'm gonna accomplish that is I'm gonna get some 150 grit, set it nice and flat, and just kind of pick an angle that feels right. This doesn't have to be exact. Just move some material real quick. And it's not going to take many strokes across the sandpaper, especially if you're using a higher grit. But Sorry, I lost my train of thought. I'm trying to find, here it is, 220. Not sure what I was just talking about, but anyways, we're gonna put a nice bevel on that. Doesn't have to be perfect. So let me get that line straight, a little bit more on that side. If it'll focus, I'll show you what we're going for here. Now yours can be a little bit different. You can make it sharper, but we're going for a nice little bevel at the end there. I'm just gonna clean up this edge. And then, just for shits and giggles, come back with some 320. Just polish it off. And let's see. Here's our end result. Looks just like the instructions. Why is this camera not autofocusing? That is unfortunate. Anyways, I'm gonna do that to the other three, once again, off camera. So we're gonna do the same thing for these two. Alright, so we got all three of these beveled off. So, looking at the instructions, now we can, let's go ahead and knock that down. Cross that out, because we finished that. Next up, they're wanting us to cut this out. Okay, that's nothing important that we really need to think about. And then use it to mark the tube. Okay. So once again, we're going to cut out this little marking guide here. Just cut it out rough first so that I can get a better hold on it. Now this doesn't necessarily have to be exact. Just for convenience, you want to get it close, because it makes it easier to see where in the end, well, let me grab this body tube here. These little lines are going to meet up. See, they're misaligned right now, but they will meet up. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a little piece of tape. I like to use masking tape. I want to use something that hopefully won't tear this coming off. We're going to anchor down the part that's got these dashes. And you want to use kind of a thin piece so that you have a little bit of give and take there. And you don't want to use a whole lot so that it doesn't add a whole lot of diameter to your tube here either. And then we're going to go ahead and get, oops, tape just fell, a bit of a larger piece. Put it in between these lines. Make sure you can see the lines. If you can't fit that in between it, depending on the kit, you might need to use a smaller piece or a different size piece of tape. And then we're going to firmly wrap this around about as tight as we can pull it without dislodging that tape. And then as we pull it around, you'll notice it's going to meet up on this side. And we're going to line up both of these sets of lines while pulling it tight as best as we can. It's a bit hard to do on camera. Let me turn it side. There we go. That's a bit better. you'll see I've got those lines lined up pretty good. This little fin marker guide's on there. I'm just gonna get that dirty piece off there. The heck, why is there more dirt on it? Oh, it's from my thumb. Well, it won't matter. It's a little bit too long. A little locking piece. Well, it's not gonna work out the way I was hoping it would. I'll just do that just to secure it on there. Now I've covered up that, but that's okay. I can still kind of see that that's his fin line. So our next step is we're going to need a pencil. Let me find a pencil. Okay, I've got a pencil. Fin lines? What do you mean fin lines? Oh. Yeah, because we're going to be putting on that stick. No wonder. Okay, I'm used to it being just one central line, but I forget we're going to have two because we're probably going to be lining this thing up. Which makes sense. Oh. Tube's a little squashed. That end's good. We'll have to make this the nose cone end. But what we're going to do is on these two fin lines, it's going to be a bit hard to see on camera. I might have to zoom y'all in a little bit. Let's tilt y'all down a bit more so I can do this more comfortably. Sorry, I'm sure this is not the best footage. We're just gonna extend off the bottom of these lines. And you want this to be pretty accurate. Doesn't have to be perfect, but you want it to be pretty accurate. Okay. Looks like got more fin lines here. More fin lines here. Covered that one up with tape a little bit. Just scrunch that back. And then, I'm not sure, they don't have it marked on here. Just putting the launch lug on. Let me just double check the instructions. See where we're putting the launch lug. Okay, we're putting that up against one of the fins, so we're not going to have a launch lug line in this case. So now, once we've got, let's just double check, we've got all of our marks made for all three fins. Now we can pull this little marking guide off, and we're going to extend these lines. I believe it said the full length. Well, it doesn't say full length, it just says extend into lines, but we're going to do it a pretty good amount of the length. Probably doesn't need to be full length. And, here we go. The traditional way to do this would be with a door frame. They sell tools to use for this, but the way I like to do it is I like to stand up this, and this works as long as the end here is flat, which so far I've had no issues doing this with Estes kits. They seem to cut these fairly square. And let's see if I can, what I'm gonna do is kind of hold it flat, and you'll notice if I twist it to a certain point, I can get both of those marks to line up. Now I'm gonna make a line there. And this is gonna be really hard to do on camera, but I'm going to try to, just to give you all an idea of what I'm talking about. So there we go. I've now extended that into a nice solid line, and I'm going to off camera repeat that for I think the other 5 lines I got to extend. Alright, so it's the next day. I've gotten all 6 of the lines put on that we will use to line up these little bar pieces there, and I've let these dry overnight. I could have just waited an hour or maybe 30 minutes for them to cure and set and done this next step, but I was tired, so I just decided to wait until tomorrow to do the other half. So what I'm going to do to make it lay flat instead of having it kind of like wobbling a little bit, I'm going to perch the other end up on this scrap piece, so that'll get it flat. And I'm only going to do that once I'm sitting there drying them, just so that they'll stay nice and flat. Let's go ahead and pop out these. And it is worth noting, you want to, because I didn't realize this when I was putting the first half on, I just kind of got lucky at first. You do want to take note of which side you're putting the glue on, because you'll notice, once again, that little angle lines up with that angle. So we'd put the glue on this side, but if I put glue on this side, then that's not going to work. So it does matter which side you put the glue on. And you may think, oh, well, if you put it on that side, then you could just flip it over and use it over here. And that is correct. But if you're trying to put it on a specific side, then, you know, that's beyond the point. So, once again, double check. Angle goes down this way, so we're putting glue on this face. Grab my piece of scrap wood. Where'd I put that at? Here it is. Right here. Titebond 2, once again. Could use super glue if you would like. Oh, it's quite a bit. It'll work though. And you can use your finger for this, because this stuff comes off pretty easily. I usually end up using my finger for a lot of it. Spread that around a little bit. Then it helps to have a little tissue nearby that you can just wipe the majority of it off. And once again, just gonna orientate it correctly, touch them together, then pull them apart. And we're gonna wait about 30 seconds to a minute. I'm probably gonna give it closer to a minute, and I'll come back when that's done. That time that we're gonna wait is just gonna help this tack up, which will help it stick a bit better. Alright, so it's been about 45 seconds to a minute or so. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna once again line it up. And once again, it doesn't have to be perfect. We're just gonna squish it down and squish out that excess glue. Wipe it off as we go. And you know, if you've got some right there, that's okay, because if it'll focus, I had some on this side, and you see, wood glue, it dries as it shrinks. That's why I'm using wood glue here, because I knew that this would probably make, one, a very strong bond, but it also is a very easy to work with glue when you're using these materials. So, I'm just going to be checking the alignment, making sure got it all nice and lined up here. A little bit more up. Press it down a little bit more. It's going to wander just a little bit. That's okay, because we'll do our final little alignment right here, right now. I think that's looking pretty good. Pull these hairs off. A little bit forward there. And basically what I'm doing here is I'm just going around and I'm looking at the edges, making sure it's flush looking on every edge. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect, because we can come back with a little bit of sandpaper if we'd like and finish it and make it look even better. Or what I'm probably going to do is where I've got like tiny little imperfections like that, but it's flush on the back, I'll probably just leave that, if I'm being honest with you, because it'll look alright. It's not a scale model. I might, if I feel so enticed once it dries, come back and sand that a tiny bit, but now that I've got that, I'm once again just going to use this as like a little prop. That's going to keep it nice and flat. And then I'm going to do the same thing to the other the other two fins off camera. Okay, so I've let these dry, and really we could have went ahead and done this, but I did not have any super glue. I'd run out. So I had to go get some super glue, and unfortunately I didn't realize I got liquid, which will work, but I prefer the gel type. It's just a little bit easier to use. Oops, kicked the tripod. But anyways, what we're going to be doing here, as per the next step here, is, well, first I've already marked. I've got a forward and an aft end, just because this one's a little bit more regular, that one's a little bit more circular. This would do better because we're going to have the nose cone holding this, the motor will go in here. But anyways, we're going to mount this end flush and the tapered end sticking out, and we're going to center it on these lines as best we possibly can. How I'm going to do this is, first let me see what the consistency of this glue is like. So, okay, it's not too runny. I'm going to put just a thin little bead going down the length of that. Try not to let it roll away on us. And then I'm not going to put it up here because we're not gluing anything to that part yet on the tapered end, but on the lower end, maybe the lower 2/3, just going to kind of repeat that using the nozzle to kind of let it soak in. And I might have put a little bit too much here, we'll have to see. Okay, now I'm going to try my best to get this lined up and put on. Got that flush, got it lined up pretty good, I think. So now I'm just going to press it nice and flat. Hold this while it sets for just a minute. Make sure it's staying straight while I'm doing that. Look down the tube. Looks pretty straight. And that glue is setting pretty good already. I think that's pretty straight. It looks like it's nice and in the lines. Got that end flush. And I'm gonna let this dry for probably about 5 to 10 minutes, just because I'm gonna try not to make a mess out of that glue because I've put a bit too much. and I've got a bead running down the side there. If that didn't happen on you, you can just wait like 30 seconds and move on to the next step. But I'm gonna wait about 5 to 10 minutes, and then I'm gonna do the rest of these off camera, and we'll come back for the next step, which should be attaching the fins. But before we do that, I'm gonna run a fillet of wood glue, and I'll show that on camera once I've got these all attached and let it dry for a bit. Alright, so I was wrong. I'm actually not gonna put fillets on this yet. I was thinking it'd be easier to do it first, but then I realized we're gonna want those fillets to extend along this where it attaches to the nose cone. So we're gonna wait on that for just a minute. I could go ahead and attach the nose cone first, but might as well not. So I guess the next step is gonna be to attach these fins. So to help us do that, I'm gonna try to use, for the first time, this little Estes fin guide, or Estes, I'm not really sure how you want to pronounce it. And normally, you'd have it kind of like this, I guess. And then these would be like that. Then the clips would hold it like my finger just was. But you'll notice because we have these on there, it might have been a good idea if I was going to use this to not put those on until afterwards. But what I'm going to do instead is put this on upside down. And I believe that in this kind of unorthodox method, I won't be able to use the clips, but I will at least be able to still kind of press up against this to hold it 90 degrees. So this is going to be a little bit unorthodox. I'm not going to need these clips due to the way I'm going to have to do this. And if you can't do that, they have this that you can use to check the alignment if you're using a slower drying glue. And they also have, you can make like a cardboard cutout that would basically, imagine this, and you take a cardboard box, you put 2 pieces of paper with this printed on it or something similar onto the thing, cut it out with a hobby knife, and then if you put the body tube through, it can hold it. That might be a bit difficult with this size, but you can also just freehand if you really need to. But anyways, for this I'm gonna tack them on with some super glue, just because it doesn't take a whole lot, because we're gonna fillet these with wood glue later for strength. And I'm gonna try my best. You want to line it up with this black line you can see, and they want to be flush with the end. I try my best to see if I can't get this to work. I think I've got it tacked on there. Looks pretty straight to me. So, double check this if we can. Should push these in further, that would have helped me. It's looking all right to me. If it's off, it's not off to an insane amount. So, again, I'm going to, off camera, repeat this for the other 3 fins, or, well, the other 2 fins, because I forget. I'm used to 4 fin rockets, if you can't tell. But I'm going to do that for the other 2. You can also just freehand this. I have before, where you just put glue on it And with this, it's a bit easier because you've kind of got a flat spot and you've got a pre-made line. So this, you could freehand that pretty easily as long as you've gotten these on pretty straight. Hello, Andy. Hello. Hello. Anyways, I guess I'm going to cut the camera, do these off camera, and pet this cat. Alright, so I got all three of those put on. And again, I was wrong. We're not going to do the fillets next. I forgot we're still going to put the nose cone on. So, let that dry for a couple minutes. They're all tacked on pretty nicely. They're not really structural. I mean, they kind of are, but they could be better, so we're still being a little bit careful with them. And you want to, of course, just dry fit this first. I've dry fitted it before I put these on, but let's just make sure that it still fits. And it does. It's a nice snug fit, but it does. Honestly, I'm a bit scared to use super glue on that because it's kind of snug. So what I'm going to do is instead we're just going to wood glue this entirely, because I feel like the super glue would grab it immediately and we wouldn't be able to get this positioned in time. So just like we had before, I'm gonna put this around, just trying to get the leading edge of this area. Putting too much most likely, but that's okay. And you know, honestly, let me do this a little bit smarter. I'm gonna give it a little bit kind of like a glaze, and then wipe my finger off and do what I normally do, which is what I should have done in the first place. It's been a while since I've built an actual new kit. Here in a minute. And inside, I'm gonna put like this. There, you can see that, what I'm doing. Spread this over a little bit. Just on this, not going too deep in it, just on the very front edge. And then, I've got that, I'm gonna get some more glue on this stick. We're just gonna put a little bit on these guys as well. Try and spread that more evenly. Okay, that's probably a bit too much, but that's gonna be okay, because we're gonna put this down in, and as it goes in, gonna keep twisting, twisting, twisting. There, it popped down in. Twist it a little bit. You can see if we keep twisting, it looks like it's actually gonna kind of clean itself up. We're putting those, and see if you leave a little bit in that corner, it's gonna be okay, because we were gonna fillet this later anyways. It's good to have a finger tissue nearby. You just want to wipe off whatever excess you can. Again, it's alright if it's down in those cracks, because we are going to fillet that later anyway. And there we go, we have got our nose cone attached. So now, let me double check the instructions. Yes, we are going to make the fillets. Okay, so now I'm going to let this, again, dry for probably about 30 minutes, just because I used some wood glue. And then I'm going to come back and apply some fillets. Alright, so I've let that dry for about 30 minutes. So it's time to start our fillets. I'm going to get my wood glue again, open this up. My little scrap stick I've been using. I'm just going to try to get it on the tip this time. I find that helps a little bit. I'm going to try and tap it to it and drag this as far as I can. Kind of use this to drag this through that channel. Use my finger to clean it up. And you can see we've got a nice fillet going there. Let's do a little bit of work here on the top. Get that nice and stuffed in there. We'll come back around and do that side here in a minute. Well, we'll go ahead and do it now, just because why not? Let's get some more glue. Repeat that same process once more. Trying to tap it, get it to... It's not wanting to do the string method for me again, so we'll just have to do the drag method. Oh, that's off frame, sorry y'all. Where's my finger napkin? Get some more glue. Set it up there for a minute. Stick some more down here. And it doesn't have to go in perfect, because you'll notice as we drag our finger across it, as gravity does its thing. Oops. Messed up this side a little bit over here. It will kind of work its way down in there. Now we've got the fillets on that. I might just dab a little bit over there. Don't want to get it down in this engine casing though. But now I've got the fillet on that. Clean my fingers off a little bit. Grab some more wood glue. And let's put the fillet on the actual fin now. I've got a little bit too much glue. Let's just knock a little bit of that off there. Let it kind of... There we go. Oops. That's alright. So we'll clean it up here in just a second. The handy dandy finger. Come over to the other side. Put that excess on there. Whoops, I keep hitting the tripod. Sorry, y'all. Get a little bit more glue for this. Just a little bit. Put some on the front here. Come back and clean this up with the handy dandy finger. Make sure our other ones are still looking good. We've not got anything too ridiculous going on here. And there we go. We have got fillets on one of the fins and one of the little, whatever you want to call that. So I'm going to go ahead and let this dry for about at least 10 minutes, just so that it doesn't want to run away on us or get messed up while we work on the next one. I usually try to wait about 15 to 20, maybe 30 minutes if I can. And then I'll go flip it over, do the next side, repeat the process of waiting flip it over, repeat, and then I'll come back and we will do the next step, which will be to attach the launch lug. Okay, so I've got my fillets made, and you may notice whenever you're making your fillets, right there's one, some little holes like that in the wood glue. And you can go back and fill these if you would like to. I would suggest you fill larger ones. Some smaller ones like that can be left. I went ahead and filled them all that I can see. And this isn't exactly necessary as long as you've got a good solid bond. It just might help our paint job look a little bit better later to have that nice smooth fillet. And of course some of these smaller ones might even disappear entirely as the glue dries more. But once the glue has shrunk down entirely, if you still see a gap showing through, you might want to put another fillet layer on there to try and close that gap up and make sure you've got a strong bond. Anyways, now that I've got all the fillets done and I'm happy with how they look, I'm just going to give it probably about another hour or two, maybe even overnight, just to make sure that all that wood glue dries and shrinks down. Then I'll come back, make sure everything looks good once more, and then we'll come back and attach the launch lug. Okay, so I've let this dry for a bit, and our next step, of course, is to put on the launch lug. Now this is our final actual assembly step, and let me pull these back over here. They show us attaching the launch lug onto the fin support and adjacent to the fin there, so not actually onto the rocket body. Kind of like this. I'm not quite sure I'm gonna do that. I'm thinking I might just stick it like this. I feel like that'll give me more purchase room for glue. So anyways, I'm gonna take some super glue, and you could use wood glue for this as well. I'm probably gonna fillet it a little bit later with some wood glue. That's what I tend to do. I'm just gonna put a nice little bead down this. And you notice I didn't put it too far towards the ends because you don't want to be clogging up this hole at all. I'm just gonna pick this one because it's more dry than the others. I'm just gonna stick that right in that corner and hold it for a couple seconds here. And that's pretty good. And I'm gonna let this dry for probably about 10 or 15 minutes, and then I'm gonna come back and put a little bead of wood glue here at least, and I'll see what I can do, maybe putting another bead down in there. Okay, so I've let this dry for probably about 30 minutes or so. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a wood glue fillet on it. So I'm making a mess with this. Let's try that again. There we go. And yeah, I'm gonna start with this side. A little bit more glue. Okay, that ought to be plenty. And get that nice and evenly spread. And we want to try to get it close to this edge, but not all the way onto the edge, because again, we're not trying to plug that hole. And you can see I just slipped and I got it on that hole, but it's okay because we're working with the wood glue right now. So we can just clean that up with our handy dandy finger. Again, it's always good to have a rag to wipe it off. And just for shits and giggles, damn, okay, I just made a bad mess with that. I'm gonna try and run a bead through here. Clean that up as best I can. Might wipe off my stick here, clean out my mess, and then use the stick to drag it through, wipe it off again, and then use the stick to clean that up a little bit. Come back with my finger, and there we go. It's a little bit hard to see on the camera, but we've got a little bit of a fillet going down and in there now. Let's clean that up just a little bit on this edge here. There we go. I think I might add just a tiny little bit more glue on that spot there. And we'll clean this up. Once more with our handy dandy fingers. And that ought to be just fine. We will let this dry overnight. And once again, just like we did before, if you want to, if you come back later and see any holes or gaps, you can come back and build this up a bit more, fill those up. I'm gonna clean this up just a tiny bit more because I've got a little bit of excess right there. That looks a lot better. Okay. And there we have it. That is the full build process of the Estes Orange Bullet. The only thing left to do, other than attach the launch lug, is to finish the rocket with some paint, primer, and whatever you choose to do. So that is going to be the end of this video. In a future video, we will come back and we will paint this rocket. That should be fairly soon, but I'm going to make that a second video because I believe this one is already over an hour long. So, we should have some more builds coming up soon. I've got the Estes Luna Dart and the Black Brant 2 kits that I'm going to be working on soon. I'd also like to say, just thank you for watching if you made it this far. I hope to see you in the next video. Should also have, after I get this painted up and finished, should have a launch video out soon. But anyways, hope to catch you guys in the next one.